Resident Evil 4 on the PS5. Now, before going into Resident Evil 4, I was well aware of its reputation. It was in the public zeitgeist all the way from the early 2000s, even up until now. So before going in, I kind of knew a few things about it already, just from the video clips and the conversations I've had. I knew that it was the first Resident Evil game to have an over-the-shoulder perspective. I knew it had over-the-top amazing action set pieces never before seen in a video game, things like that. So going into this game, my expectations were high going in from Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. But at the same time, I didn't know what to expect. And Resident Evil 4 actually knows that. It knows that you're going in with the idea of, okay, well, now what? So going into Resident Evil 4, how was it and what is this game? Well, in terms of story, in Resident Evil 4, you play as Leon S. Kennedy, who is a character from Resident Evil 2. This time, he's no longer a rookie cop. He's now a professionally trained military type on an important mission from the US government. The mission he's been given is to go to a rural area in Spain, a place that looks very isolated and abandoned, to search for the president's daughter who's gone missing. Her name is Ashley Graham, and this was her last known location. As Leon is being taken further and further deep into this rural location, he is interrupted very rudely by the villagers, who now seem to have been turned into zombies and are killing people in this ritualistic fashion. Noticing that there are enemies from his past also now involved with something in this area, Leon realizes that he must now find Ashley sooner rather than later, as the odds are far more dangerous than he had initially expected. Now, the first thing that pops out to you is this game is actually twisting the Resident Evil formula. Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 took place in this urban setting, this raccoon city or this American mansion. However, Resident Evil 4 puts you in this rural area. Not only is it not in the US, but also it's in another foreign country. The game starts off in this very small, eerie, wooded area, almost like a horror movie that takes place in the woods. And then, of course, it expands into more monolithic sites, congregations that the villagers must have once made in a particular area, all the way to mansion-like places all throughout this rural Spain setting. And it really is refreshing. However, it does kind of keep the procedural spin because you are playing as Leon S. Kennedy. You do have an arsenal of weapons and you do have military training to combat these new oddities. But immediately the location does stick out. But it's not only just the location. The actual lore of the Resident Evil franchise is also kind of twisted here. The lore of the Resident Evil games center around a speculative sci-fi concept where things are explained away by observable elements in our world. Here you have enemies who can control other people's minds, just like a sorcerer. However, it's not sorcery or it's not magic. It, once again, is explained away by science, or at least something observable. An effort has been made to make this into a kind of gothic-style dark fairy tale. It is a major spin on the Resident Evil franchise and lore. While you're playing this game, another thing that you're introduced to is an economy system. There is this merchant, this masked merchant who doesn't show his identity throughout, but you see him at different intervals at the game, which allows you to kind of save on his typewriter, like other Resident Evil games. But you can also buy, sell, trade and tune up items. One feature that really does stick out is the selling aspect. As you're playing the game, you can actually find different pieces of jewelries in the game. But what makes it unique is you can actually inlay little gemstones in these jewelries. This is very addictive because you find yourself looking for new pieces of jewelry, but then also trying to hunt for these little gems to inlay into this jewelry, because the more gems you inlay into them, the higher their value. So when you sell it, you get a lot of money. And of course, this means you can buy much more better and bigger weapons. Now, another element about this are the characters. The Resident Evil writers know how to write in very good characters, and this is no different here as well. You do meet a new bunch of allies and a new bunch of enemies along the way, and in this game, you just don't know who to trust. People who seem a particular way end up being another way, and every time you meet a new character, you just don't know where it's gonna go. So this game really does a good job of keeping those question marks floating around the story as it goes along. With that said, Resident Evil 4 does have an inconsistency when it comes to tone. In the beginning, it starts off, as I mentioned, in a very small, quiet, wooded area, and the game grows into a different genre. It then turns into this haunted castle type of game, and then it has this massive gladiatory set pieces, and by the end it turns into a Metal Gear Solid game. It turns into a spy espionage thriller. This is actually what makes the game really, really fun. But I can also imagine people who are very impressed with the first act may have wanted it to kind of continue with this quiet, isolated, rural area. I think these people are very few, but if there is anyone who is going in thinking is going to stick to that rural area in Spain, it does, but then just to let you know, it does grow into something much, much more technical, strange, and just out there. And then of course goes absolutely bombastic by the end. However, Resident Evil 4 is a very, very fun game. My experience with it was, I actually played it 3 times. My first run was on the regular PS5, and it's great. The game actually looks almost photoreal. The frame rates were kind of dipping between 54 to 60 frames, but I noticed that Resident Evil 4 actually plays better on the regular PS5 than Resident Evil 2 and 3, which was a surprise welcome. My second runs were on the PlayStation 5 Pro, but this time it was on the new PSSR. And this is a game changer because the graphics, not only do they look photoreal, it actually looks like you can step into that world. So I was very, very impressed by Resident Evil 4's graphics, and it truly is a next-gen experience. So Resident Evil 4, believe the hype, go into it. There isn't really much to dislike. This game is every bit as much as everybody has been saying it is. So I would give this a solid thumbs up, and when you're ready, please do hop in.